If you're interested, we have time for 2 or 3 questions for the Prime Minister. Are there any takers? You might want to... Looks like there's a few questions. We'll make some... I think there's one in the back.
Prime Minister, first of all, congratulations on the job that you're doing. I should introduce myself. My name is Mark McGann, and I am administrateur délégué of an American company, an Irishman who's running an American company in Belgium. We are a communications and public relations company. I want to ask you, Prime Minister, since next year, notwithstanding the relative volatility of Belgian politics, it is highly likely that you will be President of the European Council. I'd like to ask you your thoughts on current member state attitudes to the single market in the European Union. And I'd like to take the example of government attitudes to the car industry. You have seen various member state governments take very nationalistic approaches to their interventions and their support for the domestic car manufacturing industry, to the detriment of that industry in other member states, Belgium being a prime example. I'd like to ask your opinion on how we can perhaps get the European Commission to play its role to guarantee the neutrality of government with regards to the market, and perhaps to take a more strict view of the state aid rules in terms of government bailouts of the manufacturing industry. Thank you.
Thank you. If I have 2 or 3 more questions, I'm ready for a new speech. So we are a small country, we all agree on that. We are the biggest defenders and advocates of the single market. We have a small country has always a big advantage of having a huge market. So we count a lot on the European Commission and on the Competitions Commissioner, Ms. Nelly Kroes. She's a tough lady, as only ladies can be. And I think the automotive industry. We had first of all the measures taken, or the intentions by the measures by the French government. They had to withdraw a lot of those measures to help Renault and other national champions. And that was due to the intervention of the European Union. And I think in the next round of Opel, and we are a lot concerned by Opel, we have a very important firm in Antwerp, as you know. I think the European Commission will keep an eye on state aid, or so-called state aid by German governments and other governments in Europe. I think up until now, we don't suffer in Europe from really protectionist measures. That the competition commissioner does his job very well. And we had another instrument of preventing protectionism and nationalism, that is the euro. Imagine that we had no euro, that we have the German mark, the French franc, the Belgian franc. We should have competitive devaluations and protectionist measures all over Europe. So this crisis, you can't compare them with the crisis of the 30s. We have Europe. Without Europe, we will be in a mess. We will be in a lot of protectionist measures. But due to the European Commission and our competition rules, already written down in the Treaty of Rome of 58, and thanks also to the euro, we have still a single market. We have to be careful each time and by each problem and by each measure. But we have the instruments to keep the single market. I'm very glad about it.
Mr. Prime Minister David Watkiss, Phoenix Inc. On May 27, the Commission issued its communication on European financial supervision, following up on the de Rocher report. I'd just be interested in your views on whether the Commission is going far enough, too far, it's going to work or not.
But the La Rosière Committee was installed in November, at the beginning of the financial crisis. I think you always can say it is not far enough, it is too far, and so on. But the La Rosière report is there. And in my first European Council, the text was written down, the La Rosière report is something like that, is some kind of reflection note or something that's interesting to think about. And I made a suggestion that it was a plan for action. It was my first success, it was written down, I said it's duty. It was a plan for action. And the European Commission translated in directives. And now, as you mentioned, this week we will discuss about two new bodies, about systemic risks and the European Regulatory Office. There are a few points that are in discussion. One point is if there is no agreement in the European Supervisory Board for banks and other financial institutions, is there no agreement about all the members, how can you have at the end a conclusion, what we call a binding mediation? So far it is 27 countries against one country, 26 countries against one country. But I think on the whole, it is ambitious and pragmatic. And let's implement it. Let's translate it into European law. Let's start the new institutions, 1st of January 2010. Later on we see if we can approve it. But it is on the table. We have a consensus on it. Let's go forward. And I think that that's the important thing. Ambitious and pragmatic. Yeah.
One more question, George. Good evening, and thank you again for joining us tonight. It's a great honor to be able to